Banker's object in Phase 1 is to eliminate all robbers before the robbers manage to escape to Phase 2 of the game. Robber's object in Phase 1 is to find his or her partner and escape to Phase 2 of the game before they are eliminated by the bankers, or to eliminate all bankers in Phase 1 of the game. Place a gun card pile and key card pile in the centre. To determine the number of gun cards needed, multiply the number of players by 3. Hence, for a 7-player game, it will be 21 gun cards in the gun card pile. To determine the number of key cards needed, multiply the number of players by 4. Hence, for a 7-player game, it will be 28 key cards in the key card pile. Determine who is player 1, and the rest of the players will be determined by moving in a clockwise direction. You either play a role as a robber or a banker. Shuffle the deck. Start dealing the character cards to each player. All players shall look at his or her card. Now all players shall push his or her card to the left. All players shall take a peek. Now push the card to your right. Setup is now complete, and we shall start the game. Player 1 will start the game by taking a token from the token bag. Player 1 picked the number 3. Now player 1 can either choose to give player 3 a key card, or a gun card. Let's just say player 1 decides to give player 3 a gun card. Hence, player 1 finishes his or her turn, and now it is player 2's turn. Player 2 picked the number 5. Player 2 decides to give player 5 a key card. Moving forward to player 3. Player 3 picked the number 5. Player 3 decides to give player 5 a gun card. The game continues by moving in a clockwise direction. Moving forward, all players will be receiving more gun cards and key cards. Let's just say it's player 1's turn. Player 1 picked the number 2. Player 1 decides to give player 2 a gun card. Any player who receives 3 gun cards in Phase 1 will be eliminated from the game immediately. Player 2 shall now return all cards and reveal his or her identity to all players. Player 2's token shall also be removed from the token bag. Let's just say player 1 is one of the robbers. Player 1 has also accumulated 2 key cards. He or she will now look around to find his or her partner in crime by performing a reveal. Please note that only a robber player is allowed to perform a reveal and must possess a minimum of 2 key cards. The player he or she asked to reveal must also possess a minimum of 2 key cards. In this case, player 1 chose player 6 to be revealed. Player 1 has managed to find his or her partner in crime. There are only 2 robbers in this game, hence the robbers team managed to proceed to Phase 2 of the game. Let's just say player 6 is not a robber, but a banker instead. Player 1 has now made a wrong guess. The robber team does not proceed to phase 2. All cards are flipped back to face upwards. Now, player 1 has just exposed himself or herself to all bankers and has been placed at a disadvantaged position in the game. Please note that once any robber has performed a reveal and failed to escape with his or her partner, any robber player will now need to possess 3 keycards to perform a reveal in the future. However, the player he or she chose to reveal would only need to possess a minimum of 2 keycards. Let's just say player 1 has accumulated 3 keycards. He or she has the ability to peek at a player's character card of his or her choice if he or she chooses to use it. In this case, player 1 chose to peek at player 5's character card. Player 5 appears to be a banker. Player 1 appears to be a robber. In this case, player 1 and player 5 were playing opposite roles, hence player 1 will receive a gun card. Let's just say player 1 chose to peek at player 6's character card instead. Player 6 appears to be a robber. Player 1 and player 6 are now playing the same role, hence player 1 will not receive a gun card. Let's just say player 1 has accumulated 4 keycards. Player 1 can now use 4 keycards to perform a public reveal on any player of choice. The 4 keycards will be discarded. Player 1 has chosen player 5, hence player 5 will have to reveal his or her identity to all players. Any players to receive 5 keycards will need to discard all cards in their possession, including gun cards. Swapping of cards will take place at the end of every 3rd round. Player 1 shall take a token from the token bag to choose the person in charge of making the swap. Player 3 was chosen. Player 3 can now choose to swap his or her card with another player, swap 2 different players' cards, or pretend swapping the cards but in actual fact doesn't. All players' eyes are to be closed. Player 3 decides to swap his or her own card with player 4. Player 1 will once again choose another player to perform the swap for a second time. Player 4 was chosen this time. Player 4 will have to choose between the same following actions performed by player 3 during the first swap. All players' eyes are closed. Player 4 decides to swap his or her own card with player 6. Once the swap has been performed, the game resumes starting from player 1 again. Phase 1 ends when either team accomplished their object. Welcome to Phase 2 of the game. The players that were eliminated from Phase 1 will not be playing in Phase 2. Player 1 shall set the cards from start to end in any chosen fashion. Player 1 can choose to place 2 back-to-start cards adjacent to each other, but not 3. Any player from either team who reaches the end first will win the game. To move, each player has to decide whether to take a card from the move step pile. Or a player can choose to move by rolling a dice instead. There are 10 move 1 step cards, 7 move 2 step cards, and 3 move 3-step cards in the move step pile. In Phase 2, a banker player receiving 3 gun cards will be eliminated from the game. In Phase 2, a robber player receiving 6 gun cards will be eliminated from the game. Let's just say player 1 decides to use a card to move instead of rolling a dice. Player 1 will now move 1 step according to the card. Let's just say player 2 decides to use a card to move instead of rolling a dice. Player 2 will now move 3 steps according to the card. Player 1 starts by choosing to roll a dice. Player 1 rolls an even number. Hence, player 1 moves 2 steps. Player 2's turn. Player 2 rolls an even number. Hence, player 2 moves 2 steps. Player 3's turn. Player 3 rolls an odd number. Hence, player 3 moves 1 step. Player 4's turn. Player 4 decides to move 3 steps using the dice. Hence, player 4 will need to roll an even or an odd number twice in a row to do so. Player 4 rolls an odd number for the first try. Player 4 rolls an odd number for the second try. Hence, player 4 will qualify to move 3 steps. Player 5's turn. Player 5 attempts to move 3 steps using the dice. Player 5 rolls an even number for the first try. Player 5 rolls an even number for the second try. Hence, player 5 will qualify to move 3 steps. Player 6's turn. Player 6 attempts to move 3 steps using the dice. Player 6 rolls an even number for the first try. Player 6 rolls an even number for the second try. Hence, player 6 will move 3 steps. Player 7's turn. Player 7 attempts to move 3 steps using the dice. Player 7 rolls an odd number for the first try. Player 7 rolls an odd number for the second try. Hence, player 7 will move 3 steps. Player 8's turn. Player 8 attempts to move 3 steps using the dice. Player 8 rolls an odd number for the first try. Player 8 rolls an even number for the second try. Player 8 fails to roll an odd or an even number twice in a row. Hence, player 8 will need to move back 1 step. At the end of each round, each team will be able to choose 1 player from the opposing team to receive a gun card, only if a team member is ahead of the player from the opposing team. Player 1 from the robbers team is ahead of player 3 from the bankers team. Hence, the robbers team chose player 3 to receive a gun card. The robbers team aren't allowed to shoot player 4 because player 1 and 2 are behind player 4 in this round. Player 4 is ahead of both player 1 and 2. Hence, the bankers team can either choose player 1 or 2 to receive a gun card in this round. Player 1 was chosen to receive a gun card. Please note also that player 2 and 3 are not ahead of each other during this round. Let's just say player 1 decides to move by using a card. Player 1 moves 1 step according to the card. Player 1 is now required to move back to the start. Player 2 decides not to move during this round. By making this decision, player 2 will be penalised to move back 1 step. Thanks for watching Bankers and Robbers How to Play tutorial.